All right, everybody, welcome back into another episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast, the #1 podcast in the world for growing your insurance business. This is episode 40. I am Christian Brindle. I'm joined with my co-host, Glen Shelton, and we have a freaking awesome jam-packed show for you guys today. First off, good morning, Glen. How is the morning today for you, good sir?
Good. Good morning, everybody. It's interesting. We're talking about habits versus motivation, and there's so many days that I don't want to do my habits that I have set up for myself. And today was one of them. My alarm goes off, and I'm just laying there. And this is how it is for all things, though. This is how it is for all things. And we talked about this a little bit on the pod the other day. It's like, how many times are we doing things that we don't want to do, right? Like in the business, and so it's 5 a.m. My alarm goes off this morning. I'm tired. Oh, here's the other thing that happened. Here's a funny story. Okay, listen to this. I have an older vehicle, one of my vehicles. It's a Honda Fit 2010. And for whatever reason, I live in the Pacific Northwest, for those who don't know that. So it rains all the time. This vehicle is outside. And for whatever reason, if too much water gets into this vehicle's engine, the alarm will just start going off, and it cannot be stopped unless you disconnect the battery. So I go to bed. I'm gonna sleep for a couple hours. It's like just around midnight, 12:30. All of a sudden, the alarm goes off. I don't know which car it is that's going off. I'm down there. I'm half awake. I'm just like smashing all the buttons. And then I realize it's my Honda Fit, which I've had this problem before. And I turn off, go back to bed. 10 minutes later, it does it again. Now I'm outside trying to disconnect the battery in the middle of the night. So totally interrupted my sleep pattern. I wake up at 5 a.m. It would have been an easy out to be like, hey, I'm not going to the gym this morning. Didn't have a great night's sleep. But I also just want to do the thing so I can move on with my day. And that's how I view a lot of these habits, where it's like, I just got to do this thing. And then I can move on with the day. And I think the business, our business, there's a lot of things very similar to that.
There's this overwhelming popularity in the self-help community, if you will, of people teaching and talking about the concept of do what makes you happy, right? Like you hear that a lot. Do what makes you happy. If it doesn't doesn't bring you joy, don't do it. Most of the people that do what makes them happy and what brings them joy are homeless people. They end up homeless. I don't know anybody that is
makes you happy.
Even the people that are teaching and preaching this do things that they don't want to do. I 1000% guarantee it from time to time. They do not just live in this cloud. They're not like, sitting on a cloud in fantasy world, just coasting along, doing what makes them happy all the time. I think it's honestly like, and there's so many examples I have to this, right? Like when I was a new agent starting out and I was calling leads, did I enjoy doing it? Did it bring me joy? Sure, it brought me joy to be able to grow my business and get new clients and things like that. But like, did I actually enjoy the process of making the calls? Well, most of the time, probably not. But same way I don't enjoy taking out the trash, right? But I don't.
Get done.
But it has to get
done.
Has to get done. I don't want trash all around my house, right?
A hoarder. Piling strategic piles of trash. You're just walking around. Imagine if your house secretly looked like that. Imagine that.
Say taking out the trash doesn't bring me joy, so I just don't. Right. And then all of a sudden, you see those. My wife made me watch years ago. I haven't seen it forever. This hoarder show where they have.
I used to watch
trash like up to the ceiling. That would be me doing what brings me joy, not cleaning.
Hey, shout out to the final expense agents who lived the Hoarders show and have been in those houses. Raising my hand right now as a final expense agent.
Medicare agents too, by the way.
Yeah. That's not exclusive, but there's some of those senior houses where it's like, oh, you haven't cleaned in 24 years. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit on this little square of this chair.
That
And
is an
write
example
this
of
app.
doing what brings you joy.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
and so, you think about that, right? Like habits versus motivation. I'm of the opinion, because I got into a conversation recently about this that I thought was kind of peculiar, right? Like there's someone in the Facebook group that anytime anyone brings up, oh, I'm so motivated by this, or like, motivation, this, like he just jumps on them. He's the motivation police. And
Ooh.
I don't want to say
I thought compliance police were bad.
motivation
I
police
didn't
is the new
realize
thing.
we have motivation
And,
police. 2025, everybody. This is wild.
but I got into an interesting conversation about it because, like, I see these comments and I'm like, for the record, right? Like having something motivate you, in my opinion, is not a bad thing, right? Like everyone in every level of success has things that motivate them. I think where it becomes problematic is when you have motivation and like, you're listening to Tony Robbins when you get up in the morning and you're like power, ultimate power, you know what I mean? But like you have no good habits that you form, right? I think they almost go hand in hand together. Like I always think about the story of Michael Jordan playing the Sonics in the finals in the 90s, right? And their coach is George Karl. And he goes to a restaurant like before, I want to say it's like game 1 or something. And George Karl is there and he doesn't come over and say hello to MJ. So he takes it as like a personal slight. He's like disrespected. And that was like a motivator for him. It's a real story. It's in The Last Dance, like,
okay. I believe you.
And so he takes it as like a personal slight. It's almost like he was like inventing it, and he's like, I'm gonna kick their asses tomorrow, in this game.
Yeah.
Like he almost like would invent ways to motivate himself. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So I think that's important. Like I have things that motivate me. Like there's people like I want to, just prove them wrong, that they were wrong about me. I'm motivated by people that when I was a kid, they told me I would never amount to anything. Like it's almost like I just, and a lot of those
people have that in common. We have that in common. We've talked about this. We have those people.
We have talked about this. And what is those feelings if not motivators?
For sure.
Right? Like,
for sure.
If you're not motivated, I almost look at it like you don't care about anything, you don't want anything. And why do all the habits if you don't want anything?
Hey, shout out to Mike Hansen, who told me 10 years ago I'd fail out of the business. I got on the phone. Michael Hansen. He was executive at the IMO I was under. He calls me up because I got a chargeback, and he's looking at his reporting. I'm in the office grinding away trying to set appointments as my own little independent agent, right? I did get a chargeback or two, and for whatever reason, he decided to call me up. I don't know if my manager told him to call me or if he got reporting on me. And I remember I think about it all the time. I think about this phone call all the time of him telling me, hey, Glenn, it looks like you're on your way of failing out of the business. This is
just because
verbatim.
Just because of a chargeback?
Production had, I hadn't written as much, for whatever reason, I hadn't written as much over the past couple of weeks. And then I got a couple chargebacks, and, I don't know if, I think me and my manager weren't getting along great either. So that, I think it was a series. It wasn't just one thing, but I think about this phone call all the time, and I would love to get on the phone with him again right now and be like, hey, Mike, I thought I was failing out. What happened, dude? Like,
I have a list on my phone of incidents where I felt yeah. Oh yeah. I have a list.
Oh,
yeah, I really do. It's real. And
I had no idea you had a physical list. In what is it? Billy Madison? What movie is it where he calls up and like apologizes, and then there's like there's a list on the wall, and he has lipstick, and he like takes the lipstick, crosses the name off the list. That's you, dude.
Yeah.
I love this. I love that you have a list. This is great.
I didn't actually start doing it until about a year and a half ago. I read for the first time Your First 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David, and he was like encouraging that type of behavior. You know, he's like you need a little darkness in you, if like to be successful.
100%.
He's like it's not a bad thing. Like I have on my list, teachers of mine, because I used to have teachers because I was like the class clown, right? I didn't try in school, didn't do my homework, like I was that kid, and I was the class clown. We talked about this on the Joanna pod, and so I had teachers that would like basically call me out in front of the class and without saying it, say that I'm stupid. And I was like, you're going on the list. You're going on the list.
You're on the list.
And
you're like, okay.
It's one of those things where it's like, I don't keep in touch at this point with probably almost anyone I went to high school with,
Right.
And I had good friendships with a lot of people I went to high school with, good relationships, but still a lot of them are on the list. Some of them didn't even do anything. Some of them is just like, I want to do better than life than you. You know what I mean? Like
competitive. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know for a fact I'm doing better than anyone in my high school class. So that's great. Now I need like a new person to go after in my list, but like,
you need a bigger list. He needs a bigger list. You need, but I think the MJ story is really applicable that you share, because I think what happens there will be a point where you don't have motivation, where your habits are going to seem like, ugh. I mean, NBA, yeah. I mean, NBA players have to go out, bothersome, tedious, exhausting, so you're going to have to dig deep sometimes and grab something, find something. And I love that MJ story, because I think that's probably what some of the greats are doing, right? Is they're so sick in the head that they're literally creating fake stories to keep pushing when they don't want to push. I love that.
There's a lot of MJ stories like that, where like he would make up a story that like another player that was going to be guarding him was talking smack about him, and then like they'd interview the player later and be like, "No, it never happened. I didn't say anything."
Said that,
but he dropped 49 on me. You know what I mean? Like,
so crazy, dude.
And
I love it.
Tim Grover talks a lot about this in his book Relentless. Highly recommended if you guys haven't read that book. It's really good. Tim Grover, for those of you that don't know, he's kind of a motivational speaker now. I don't think he's a very good speaker. I saw him live once, but he was the trainer for Michael Jordan, then Kobe Bryant, then Dwayne Wade. So he was like, he was intimately around these guys, and talks about really their dark sides in terms of their motivation. It's such a terrific book. But I want to circle back on this and just also emphasize that motivation without habits gets you nowhere, right? The motivation is sometimes looked at as like the sexy part of it, right? It's like, oh, I'm so motivated. People go to events, that are just motivational events, and they just get all motivated, and they get all, they don't even know what they're motivated to do. They're like, I'm so motivated. And then
motivated.
Oh, I'm so motivated. I think that is just so tacky, in my personal opinion. I think
hate
it's corny.
I hate it.
But then and they don't learn anything about what to do with that motivation. And then they go back home or wherever they came from. And then within a couple of days, it's gone, right? Like
outer space. Well, we don't know. Wherever they came from.
Yeah, wherever they came from. They went back to the moon. They're moon people.
Martians. We got Martians down here, guys. They're selling insurance.
So obviously, right, like you need those habits, because it's been proven in human psychology, as Glenn was saying at the beginning, right, is like doing something over and over and over again, a habit is what makes it stick. It's not based on how motivated you are, but having motivators does contribute, in my opinion, towards keeping you going, right? I think both are very applicable and helpful.
you kind of need both. You can't necessarily choose one. You do kind of need both. But if I had to pick one, I think the habit is a lot more powerful than the motivator.
Agreed.
I have this sick thing too, where the less I want to do something, this is something I feel like I've developed later in life, but the less I want to do something, the more I force myself into it.
Me
And
too.
it doesn't really matter. That could be a bunch of different things. Like if I'm at the gym, I'm going to lift more. I'm going to spend extra time on the bike, the treadmill, whatever. If it's, work related, I'm making that many more phone calls, when I would have stopped an hour ago, maybe, right? Like it's something about the psychological factor of like, okay, not only did I not want to do this, I did it. And then I did even more of it. And I don't know if it's like I'm trying to prove something to myself, but that's been really powerful for me personally.
Sometimes you have to prove things to yourself. Sometimes
Yeah.
you doubt yourself, and it's almost like you yourself are on your list, your hit list.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Christian's number one on his list. It's like Mr. Brindle. Like, is that your dad or you? What are you like? It's me.
Who is this? What?
Who's Mr. Brindle?
Is your uncle? Your great uncle?
You're like, nope, it's me, guys.
No. Yeah, I mean,
it's true though. That's the funny part, is it's 100% true. I'm on my list for sure. For sure. I love that.
And people, I think it also ties together with the time of year we're in right now. Like there's a lot of people that created New Year's resolutions that they've already quit them, right? Like I made a post at the beginning of the year that I was like, oh, all these damn people at my gym. I can't move my elbows. They're there. You know what I mean? People got on me about that. They're like, encourage them. I'm like, no, I encourage them to go back to bed. So you go away.
Let me have my gym back.
This week, all week I've been at my gym. It's been probably a third less people. You know what I mean? Which is awesome. Just great. Stay in bed. Or go to a different gym.
Well, I think tomorrow's officially Quitters Friday, I think is what they call it. Like most people have already quit their resolutions by tomorrow.
Yeah. And I think, like that comes down to like, you're trying to ingratiate these super extreme habits that you've never done before without building the habit. And it's all based off of motivation. That's where all the quitting comes from. And so like, I feel like ingratiating good habits allows them to be long-term and have longevity. And I think that's the biggest flaw with New Year's resolutions. I think like if you have a new thing you want to do in your life, waiting for like a month or two for a New Year's to come, so it's a New Year's resolution, is such a flawed, dumb way to take it. To take it,
totally agree.
I've always lived by the concept of like, if I put it off till tomorrow, if I say I'm going to do it tomorrow, tomorrow will never come.
Right.
And so it has to be today. It has to be today, otherwise never. And I think that's a big problem with a lot of people, is that, they have this New Year's resolution mainstream culture built into their psyche. And I think it's just dumb. It's just dumb. It's not the way to do it.
It's a cultural phenomenon that needs to die. Guys, today's episode, I want to get to the sponsor of today's episode, is Hire Heroes. Hire Heroes can provide a curated, trained, professional, executive level assistant in your business within less than a week of you requesting this person. And they can come in and handle your low level task, your no revenue generating tasks, the type of things that a lot of you are wasting your time on, that Christian and I have talked about many, many times on the show already. These are tasks that are keeping you from scaling your business, earning more money, growing, and essentially having more revenue coming into your business than you could imagine. And all it takes is one person to start seeing those types of results. So if you need help, if you feel like you're drowning, if you feel like you're wearing too many hats, I highly recommend heading over to hireheroes.com, HIREHEROES, hireheroes.com, and grab an executive level virtual assistant today who can come in and help you grow your business. It's a life changer.
Amen to that.
Yes.
Before we segue to our main topic of the show today, which is investing, I feel like there's so much
Yeah,
we can talk
baby.
about with this. I'm
Baby.
actually getting a little, hot and bothered just thinking about it. Wanted to remind everybody that if you comment on one of the live streams of this week's
Yes.
podcast in the Facebook group Seven Figure Medicare Agent, because this podcast is distributed all over the place, but that's the easiest way for us to track it. You will be entered into, and all it takes is one comment on one stream. However, if you comment on each stream, you're entered in 4 times, right? Because there's four pods that went up this week. You'll be entered into a live giveaway where you'll have a chance to win some T65 leads, and we'll be announcing that tomorrow live in the Facebook group. So make sure that you get in on the action, as they say, and make sure
Friday.
Make sure you're involved in Freebie Friday, guys. Okay.
Yes.
Let's transition into the main topic, and that is investing. So this topic was fresh in my mind. I did make a video about stock market investing for the YouTube channel. So if any of you that watch the YouTube channel, anything like that, that'll be coming out on Saturday.
Ooh.
And just trying to do something a little different. Just seeing if you guys like that. I am obsessed with the stock market. I am so interested, so fascinated. I have 6 figures in the stock market. But that being said, one thing I talked about at the beginning of this video is who should be investing in third-party things like the stock market or real estate or anything like that. And where should you be at in your business? Because I'm a big believer that if you are someone that's under the 7-figure, let's say, revenue mark, it's an unwise thing to invest into anything that's not your own skills that help you do something better in your business, like a course, a conference, something like that, right? Investing in you, or investing in your business itself, hiring, systems, marketing, any of those types of things, buying leads. That is going to be the biggest and highest ROI you can possibly get. But once you start to grow to a point where your business is in the 7-figure range, sometimes it's probably not the worst idea to diversify your net worth, right? That's kind of the approach that I've tried to take. I think about myself, right? When I first started investing into the stock market, my business wasn't a 7-figure business yet. I was investing into the stock market, and I think I had about 40K in it at the time. And I'll never forget, I had a call with, I'll give him a shout out. I had a call with the great Dante Cantu. And
friend of the show. And
I was talking to him. I was frustrated about certain areas of my business I didn't feel like were materializing. And we're talking. And then I mentioned, the stock market. And he's like, in my opinion, that money should be going back into your business. And I'm like, but Dante, I got a great position, and he was right. I took a couple of months to really ponder that, and I decided to sell off all the stocks, all the shares and everything, and put it all back into the business for the remainder of that year. And we had a tremendous growth year, that in the next 12 to 18 months following that decision. So I think, first and foremost, if you're not at the 7-figure mark, investing into anything else that's not either you, your skill set, your business, is just unwise. And I learned that from experience. But anyway, I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because this is a big topic that we can dive into.
It is a big topic. It's a great topic. I love this topic. I like what you just said. I think, and here's a simple way of looking at it. And this is where it, over the years, and I've had a lot of money in the stock market at times. I've made money in the stock market, but here's where I always get caught not wanting to put any money in the stock market is when you get down to percentage of returns. If you're a conservative investor in the stock market, which, what's interesting is I've seen a lot of opinions from influencers about the stock market recently where like this comes, I think, from Warren Buffett, which obviously, if you don't know who Warren Buffett is, turn the stream off right now. This probably isn't the conversation for you, but Warren Buffett, one of the most prolific stock market investors of all time.
Probably the greatest investor who's ever lived. I think it's safe to say that, right?
I think Warren Buffett did a competition with someone in his company or someone else, and he basically said, I'm going to invest in the S&P 500. You can go invest in anything you want. I'm going to beat you just by investing in the S&P 500. And I'm pretty sure he beat the pants off of this person.
So if I remember right, I don't think the contest actually happened. Maybe it's a different thing.
It was all hypothetical.
Maybe it's a different thing, but like he bet several of the largest hedge fund managers at the time.
Okay.
That you can't beat the returns of the S&P 500, and why don't we put up, I can't remember how much money it was, like $1 billion or something like that, on the line of it, and none of them would accept. None of them would accept. So I think that's a great point. On the flip side, I was watching a video recently about Warren Buffett. I'm reading, and I'm currently I'm not reading it; it's too long. But I'm listening to Warren Buffett's book about his life, Snowball. I'm probably about 2/3 of the way done with it. It's really, really good if you're interested in Warren Buffett. Like, it goes really deep into him, his story, the way he,
his philosophy. Sounds great. I need to pick that one up.
It's probably a 30-hour audiobook is the thing.
Holy.
So it's quite the investment. I've been listening to it at the gym and, in the shower, in the steam room, because I have, waterproof earbuds.
Ooh.
Highly recommend, by the way. But anyway,
millionaire status, you guys. Waterproof earbuds.
They're like $40 whole, you guys. At Best Buy. But if you look, this is the interesting thing about Warren Buffett, right? He doesn't invest into the S&P 500, into index funds or anything like that. Like, it's not what he does. So by him saying that, it's an interesting phenomenon. He probably looks at it like from the perspective of like, those rules don't apply to me because I'm Warren Buffett.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, he's smarter than the average man. And
I've heard him say a few times that a majority of stock market investors would outperform. They would do better investing in S&P 500 index funds opposed to investing into individual stocks. And I believe he's right about that.
Me too.
Because what I've learned in terms of like to really do well investing into individual stocks, it takes a great deal of research and study into the stock, right? You need to look at, the cash to debt ratios. You have to look at the annual reports, the Q4s. You have to look at the PE ratio, the forward PE ratio of the company. And you have to be reading about things that are going on with the business. You have to also like project where that business is going, right?
Then you also have to balance what the economy's doing, because you could pick an absolute winner, but the economy could have something going on, or the sector of that business has something that's going on that's not specific to the business that could cause the stock to change direction. So there's so many variables that you really have to account for. It's very difficult, especially at the speed of information now today. Something could come out, this afternoon, and then something completely different comes out tomorrow morning, and
totally
boom, boom, boom. It's bouncing all over the place.
And most people that invest into the stock market, that buy individual stocks, what they're doing is gambling, because they don't know any of the information. They don't know anything about the company. They don't know anything about the stock. They don't do any research into it. They don't listen to the conference calls, the quarterly conference calls or anything like that. They're just like, oh, I'm going to buy Disney because that sounds fun. And
blue chip stock, right?
Yeah.
Been around forever. Yeah.
And they're just randomly kind of picking stocks, and I think that's how most people that invest into the stock market do it. They don't know why they're buying anything, or like they're
Sure.
sold by a stockbroker. The stockbroker, I just recorded yesterday.
Oh, I can't wait to
Clip, it'll
see
probably
this.
come up today.
I can't wait to see this.
We remade this scene from Wolf of Wall Street where he's calling up, he's like, John, I'm going to tell you about Aerotime Dynamics. He's like, it's a cutting edge firm that has huge forward trajectory or whatever he says, right?
Yeah. In radar technology.
He's like, it's trading right now for 5 cents a share, John. And by the way, our analysts predict it can go a heck of a lot higher than that. And they showed it's like some shack, right? Like, it's falling
Kansas.
apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, John. Anyway, but like those situations are real, right? Like maybe not to that severity anymore. Maybe it does still happen. I don't know. But like, you have a stockbroker that's trying to sell you on a certain stock. There's people that still probably happens with. So you look at the average person that's an investor. And by the way, I don't consider myself like a great investor or anything like that, but I do like it. I do enjoy it, and I have disposable income to do it with. And I've done okay with it, right? I've made money, haven't lost money, but on some of my portfolios, I'm probably underperforming the S&P.
Right.
There are some that I'm outperforming, but that could change today. That could change tomorrow, kind of thing.
Let's talk about the annual return on the S&P 500. Okay.
Yes.
What would you say the average return if someone's investing in the S&P 500? They're being, relatively conservative. What are they typically seeing as an ROI?
I've always I think on average, if you average like a long period of time, right? Like there's going to be years where it's higher than others, right?
Sure.
But probably 8 to 10%.
Yeah, I was gonna say 5 to 10%, right? 5%'s not a great year. 10%'s probably a overperforming year, right? As far as like average goes, it's probably in that ballpark, right? And this brings me back to my annuity days, because fixed index annuities, right? Huge pitch of that product is you can take advantage of the upside without the downside of losing your money. The stock market can go negative. Fixed index annuity has a floor, but you can get upside potential. But anyways, whether we're talking about annuities or we're talking about S&P 500 or we're talking about mutual funds, if you are a conservative investor and you're not like really gambling, right? If you're not doing penny stocks, if you're not doing stock options, if you're not taking a flyer on a company that you think is going to have a huge spike, whatever, or you're betting against a company you think they're going to tank, the average return out of the stock market annually is probably between 5 to 10%. I'm pretty confident when I say that.
Yeah. It got me curious on what the all-time return is.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking it up to see if I can find it on the S&P 500.
Hey, Jamie, Google that. Google that.
Yeah, we
Pull
need
it
a
up, please.
Jamie. We need a Jamie for this.
Jamie, Google it. Pull it up. Pull it up.
And by the way, right, I have in some of my portfolios S&P 500 index funds, right? Because it's very low risk. It's kind of set it and forget it kind of thing. Okay, so I'm having trouble finding the all-time return, but here, this is an interesting one, right? 2016, 9.5. 2017, 19.4.
Okay.
2018, -6.
Oh.
2019, 29% return. 2020, 16.2. 2021, 27.
Wow.
2022, -19. So that's a bad year. 2023, 24 and a half. 2024, 23.3, and still too early to know 2025. So that's the last 10 years, give or take. This episode of the 7 Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by my mini course, How to Find and Buy Books of Businesses. Guys, in 2024, Glenn and I, in our combined company, purchased and acquired through acquisition 900 clients. And over the years, we've purchased thousands of clients to grow our agency internally. And we've learned a thing or two over the years, right? There's certain things you need to look out for. You need to know how to value a book of business. You need to know how to transfer everything, what the expectations are in terms of the timeline. And you need to know how to put a deal together and structure it to protect yourself while still at the same time doing good business with people. Guys, this mini course is around 10 videos long. It's a quick and easy thing to get through. And it's a great way for you to grow your book of business in 2025. Whether you're finding an agent that is maybe been in the business for decades and they want to retire, and then maybe they don't have any kids to take over their business. Maybe you're looking at a situation with an agent that just hasn't been able to make it in the business and they're just looking to go off and try other things. Buying books of businesses can be a great way to quickly and rapidly grow your business fast. And we've unveiled all of the little tools and tricks that you need to know in this training. It's a one-time purchase for only $197. For that price, we're practically giving it away. Make sure to check it out now. Now back to the show.
See, it's interesting because on a good year, there's some big numbers there. I mean, 20%, 25%, that's really great ROI on your dollar. But if you can't see the future and you're just riding the wave, you have to account for those losses too when you lose 20%. So
yeah,
again, I stick with those numbers, the averages. You could say 10%. That's fine. If you want to say 10, we can use 10% for the sake of this example, this argument.
Yeah, I think
go ahead.
I think if it's like over the course of like, it depends, right? Like, because the whole game with the stock market is being a long-term investor. You know what I mean? It's being a long-term investor.
You can be a short-term investor. There's day trading.
There's never been anyone that's succeeded at it, though. There's no Warren Buffett's of day trading. There's no.
Isn't that what a lot of these hedge funds are gigantic day traders, right?
Sure, but they won't bet they can beat the S&P 500.
Right. The long game is so much safer, right?
It's safer, but like the best investors that have ever had performances, like you can look at all of them, right? Ray Dalio,
right. I love Ray Dalio.
Warren Buffett, like these are the guys that are long-term investors,
Right.
There's never been anyone that's, been in the top 5 of stock market investors that's been a day trader. There's just guys selling scammy courses, and things like that. The hedge funds make money because people give their money to the hedge funds.
Well, it's why absorb the risk? If you know you're going to make money long term, why would you gamble short term?
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
It's just long term, investing into the stock market long term is investing into the U.S. economy long term. So if you believe long term the U.S. economy is going to go up and not go down, or appreciate, not depreciate, it's a very safe investment. But it's one of those things where, like, by doing so, you probably should go into it understanding that you need to have the money tied up for 10 years, or 15 or 20 years, to get the most out of your money. Like Warren Buffett bought Coca-Cola shares in the 80s.
Could you imagine?
He bought them for less than $1 a share, I believe.
Probably.
And they're trading about $56 to $60 a share today.
Not to mention the splits that have happened, though, right? I know for a fact that stock has split over and over and over and over.
Sure. Yeah. And the dividend revenue that's come in all these years, right?
Yeah.
Like,
huge.
So like that kind of stuff is what made Warren Buffett as wealthy as he is.
Right. Picking winners and riding them.
Yes.
Yeah.
For
hang on. I want to get this point across. We've talked a lot about stock.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to get this point across. Okay. So yes, you could be the outlier. You could be like Warren Buffett. You could pick winners. You could maybe pick some funds that are doing more than 10%. Maybe you could figure out a way you're getting 20% on average. But generally speaking, if you're being a conservative investor and you're working with the stock market, you're getting probably about 10%. I would even say some of these real estate funds are like commercial real estate funds, probably not much more than that either. Like if you're getting a conservative, so conservative investing, 10%. I struggle with putting money in any of these spots because I know with my business, our business, that we can put $1 in and get more than 10%.
Of course.
So I always struggle with it because the trade-off never made sense to me. If you know what your net margin is at the end of the year, you should have a very clear idea of what $1 in versus $1 out. Like you should know what that looks like: 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. And if you know what that is, and you know it's more than 10%, which it should be. I don't know many.
Yeah. It's actually like a sad, pathetic performance if it's not
at 10%.
If it's not at least that. I think and that's kind of circling back, like at the beginning, my perspective is, I think if you're not at the 7-figure mark, you should never invest in anything other than your business. And I'm not saying you should ever, leverage money from your business to do it. The only reason I even invest in stocks today, guys, is because like our structure now is, we get paid salaries and they're separate from the business.
Right.
And they need something to do with that money. You know what I mean? Like, and like, that's the way to look at it, right? Like we're in such a more buttoned up kind of, we're in such a more buttoned up kind of setup now with the company, which is a good way to do it, right? Like we both get our salaries, everything like that. Like we don't take our own salaries and put them into the company, that never happens. But we take excess funds from the company and invest them into different things for the company.
I think the goal gets different, right? At 7 figures, you're almost looking at diversification of wealth versus creating wealth, right?
Yes.
When you're six figures, it's like, how can I create wealth?
Yes.
When you're at 7 figures, it's like, how can I maintain wealth and divert? That's kind of my mindset when I'm hearing what you're saying.
Yeah. I think that's very, very true. I think that's very, very true. But always, as an entrepreneur, if you're looking for the most guaranteed return of investment on your money, and that's what you're looking for, nothing will beat investing in you or investing in your business, in my opinion. I just think it's just never going to happen. And, I think that's the way that's the message I would portray to people. I remember a couple of years ago now, probably 3 years ago, someone posted in another group about like, agents investing into like EFTs or maybe it was mutual funds. I don't know. They were like, they were like this expert of teaching agents how to invest their money into things like that. And it wasn't our group. It was some other group, but it was an agent group.
Okay.
And I commented, and I think I have a tendency of being an ass sometimes.
No.
Sometimes I don't mean to be. Sometimes I don't mean to be, but like I come across that way. And I commented on it, and I was like, I just totally just shut them down. I was like, why would anyone invest into any of this garbage over their business? I think I said something like that. And that person was like really butthurt. The person that ran the group reached out to me and they're like, you really hurt their feelings. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I don't agree with what they're doing. You know what I mean? I don't agree with what they're doing. And that there's agents that are making $90K a year or something like that will put all of their free cash flow into something like that. They won't even think about investing into their business, and I think they need to hear that message. No, bad. Almost like slapping their hand. Bad. Invest into your company. No. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, why would you think about it like this on the stock market, right? Why would you, if you're at that place, invest into someone else's company that you have no control over rather than the company that you have all the control over?
That's a great way of framing it. That's a
Yes.
really great way of framing it, in my opinion.
You know everything that's going on. You intimately know the business, right? Like you talk about like understanding and knowing businesses and doing the research.
Yeah.
You have to do no research on your own business because you know everything. You know it top to bottom. You're an expert in your own business.
This ties back to the very start of this pod today. You guys were talking about habits versus motivation, because I think what I'm seeing with agents, and as you know, if you're buying marketing, you're buying leads, that's a form of investing into yourself, into your business.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing that perspective of agents, I've essentially had a decade of insight on agents and agencies owners and how they invest in their business. And what I've seen a ton of and still see today is shiny object syndrome, where you might be an agency owner. You might have a very clear understanding that if I buy X leads, we should convert around this money, and this is going to be the ROI, 30%, whatever the number is. And even though they know these numbers and they've seen it firsthand and they've done it a few times, they're constantly chasing a shiny object. Oh, I want to try this, or what about this, or so and so has a training on this I want to try to go do. And if you have the habit of knowing, if I do this, I make this much money, and you have the system in place and you can just cycle it, right? It's like legal money laundering. It's wild when you really look at it. It's literally like, buy this, sell this, and then you get this, and then you can just keep doing it over and over again. You know,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
crazy how simple it can be. You guys make it complicated. It doesn't need to be.
I agree. Yeah, you're 100% right about that. It should be a clean cycle like that just continues to have you grow exponentially.
Yeah.
Um, I see agents putting their own money in annuities too. What are your thoughts on that? I have some thoughts on that.
Mm. Are they doing it in the sense they want to showcase it to clients, right? Like I used to take my life
Yeah.
policy out, right? I used to do that as an agent. I'd pull my life policy out of my bag and be like, here's my policy, Mrs. Jones. Slam that thing on the table, and to showcase that I'm a
Yeah.
believer, I'm a buyer. Like, so if they're doing it from that angle to help them sell more annuities, I think I'm pretty supportive of it. But then this whole, essentially, what's the difference between an annuity and a mutual fund? I mean, the returns are still going to be very small, not to mention the penalties on liquidation if you actually need to access those funds early. Like, I'm not a fan of that. Now,
Yeah.
now I'm not here to shit all over annuities. I don't want you to think that. If you're listening to this, I think annuities have a place for the right people. I used to offer annuities. I've actually written some annuities myself personally as an agent. So I understand annuities and they have a place. But as an agent, if you're thinking I need to get as much cash as possible into an annuity for myself, I question whether you're looking at the numbers correctly.
I see people that are big annuity people in our space that
Okay.
almost like pitch other agents to do it when they're talking about, in on different communities and things like that. It's like
Interesting.
I could put in this an annuity for you, like to another agent. You know what I mean? And like I think some agents do it that don't sell annuities. They're like, oh yeah, maybe I'll do that. Like,
Oh, when you're
like
a hammer, everything's a nail, I guess, right? Like,
so that I say that to say, right? Like my perception of annuities, having never sold them, and I could be off on this. And if I am, you are the more seasoned annuity aficionado and on
it
this
might be.
this podcast today. But my look at it is it's for the most part, and I know there's different types of annuities, but for the most part, they're very safe, small returns.
Yeah.
And they're probably best suited for like an older person that
Yeah.
that can't take risks, right? Like an older person
Yeah.
that they don't want to take risks with their money. They don't have time to make it back, right? If they lose something.
It could be a younger person that's looking to diversify, right? I mean, there's situations like that where, maybe you come into an inheritance or some type of lump sum of cash and maybe you are earlier on in life and you want to just kind of lock away a portion of that money to keep it safe and have maybe a lower return on it, but you're okay because you don't want to take that type of risk with that money. And that's totally fine. A single premium annuity, right, where that lump sum goes in. And then there's, of course, annuities where you're paying in monthly. There's annuities that have like life insurance benefits almost tied into it, like riders attached to it. It gets pretty convoluted. It really, it's the life insurance and annuities, like it comes all the way in, and then you have like cash value life, where it's very integrated, where you have to really understand the products and what the fit is for the right person.
I know it probably varies, but what do you feel like is an annual return of investment of an annuity?
But see, the funny part is these annuity guys, they love to have these. What's it called when you what's it called when you're quoting like a big life policy and you have like the projection? There's a term for it I'm blanking on right now.
I don't know. I'm not a life guy.
There's a term for it where you're like, hey, check out the projections of your policy, right?
Okay.
Apologies to the
policy
listeners.
Schedule? Policy schedule?
I don't think it's policy schedule, because this is a quote. It can be done in a quote before you actually issue the policy, but essentially they'll show like, hey, these are the projected returns on your annuity. And I think part of where this gets dicey too is some of these agents out there are, because it's really easy in these quoting systems to put in numbers that aren't realistic, right? So you can tweak the numbers and be like, look, Mrs. Jones, in 5 years, your annuity will be worth triple what it's worth today,
Right.
And so that's where it gets dicey. In my opinion, the reality is an annuity is very much so equivalent to probably a safe mutual fund, right? And there's annuities where you can capitalize on the stock market, indexed annuities. That was at the time when I was selling annuities, that was one of the hot items. I don't know, maybe things have changed. I never got my variable license, so I could never get that deep into it. But you might make 6 to 10%. Again, I think maybe 6 to 12, right? Maybe there was a little higher possible return, but it's still, in my opinion, comparatively, when you're comparing it to your business should be so much higher rate of return. I love what Christian said, you guys, where from a control standpoint, when a dollar goes into your business, you have full control over execution on that ROI.
Yes.
If I sink a bunch of money into Coca-Cola right now, even though they might be a great company and I think they're going to do great things long term, the government could rule soda illegal tomorrow, and all of that money
RFK,
is
baby.
Yeah, right. I like, and then your investment's down 50%, and that's it. Like,
please don't do that, RFK. I have a few shares. Please don't. So, and I know there's so many different types of annuities, right? Like, I was talking to my dad the other day, and my dad put somebody into an annuity, and his is like an ultra safe one. So the return of investment's lower, right?
Super low. Yeah.
3 to 5%, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And I remember asking him, I was like, Dad, you could put it in a CD for like 5.2.
Yeah.
Why don't you just put it in a CD? You know what I mean?
A lot of them are glorified CDs, right? It's a very similar product. Yeah.
And I found that just kind of interesting. You know what I mean? Because like in my head, I'm like, okay, and I could be wrong about this, but CD's probably shorter term. It's probably easier to get out of, right? Like CD 12 months, 24 months, something like that.
Annuities are usually like 7 years, 5 to 7 years.
Yeah. And so I don't know, I can see it from the perspective of like a senior that wants a really guaranteed return.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense to me. But like, if you're in your 30s, your 40s, something like that, and you're an agent and you're making, let's say, 125 a year, 150 a year, and you're putting money into a freaking annuity, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. It should be going into your business. It should be going into your business.
There's some annuity guys that are going to hear this. They're going to come pitchforks for you, like, how dare you? How dare you say we should have someone? I'm not an annuity expert by any means. I know just enough to be
I'm far
dangerous.
from. I'm
Yeah.
far from. Yes.
I know just enough to be dangerous. I did not sell very many. I sold a few. Sold more cash value life policies than annuities. That's where a lot of my knowledge comes from. So maybe, we should have at some point, I'd like to have a guest on the pod, you guys, who is an annuity expert. We'll have to revisit this topic because I think this is a great topic. I think it's a
Agreed.
great topic.
Yeah. And I say all that to say not that like annuities are bad or this is bad as this is bad. It's just that, man, invest your money into your business and you and what
Yeah.
you know and what you're capable of doing and what your skill sets are. Like that's going to bode the biggest ROI. That's really the message, I think, more
Yeah.
than anything else to me.
100%.
And if, I think you shouldn't really worry about diversifying until you're in the 7-figure range, right? Like, I hear people talk about diversifying, and they're making 200 a year, 300 a year. I'm like, diversify what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you're not, you know what I mean? Like, you don't
Yeah.
have anything substantial to diversify.
100%.
And so that would be that's kind of more my message more than anything else. Like I invest in the stock market. I like investing in the stock market. I'm in a different space. I'm in a different position than a lot of you guys. I'm more like thinking about diversification,
Long term.
long
Yeah.
term, right? Like I'm thinking about like
protecting assets.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
about stocks I can buy with money I'm not going to need for 10, 15 years. And will those companies be more valuable or less valuable in 10, 15 years? I think a lot of them, it's a pretty good chance they'll be more valuable.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my whole, philosophy when it comes to that. But when I was doing it before the business was the size that it is right now, it was a mistake and I shouldn't have done it. And it was the right decision to sell it all off and put it all back into the business because it did wonders for us.
Yep. I love it. I love it. Guys, we're getting close to the hour mark here, so I want to jump into my final thoughts and then I'll ask Christian what his final thoughts are. Everything that we talked, I love this conversation. We could probably go 2 hours just talking about investments and comparing investments. We'll definitely revisit this topic. I think this was a great conversation and super topically relevant for you as an agent, whether it's for yourself or your, again, life insurance license, right? That's essentially an investment license to a degree where you can work and help others set up some of their investment accounts, right? If life insurance in and of itself can be looked at as an investment. So what's the grain of salt that I want you guys to take this conversation with, though, is what's best for Christian and I might not be best for you. And what's best for you might not be best for your clients. I think everyone, depending on where you're at in life and what your income looks like and what your asset versus liabilities look like, everything's going to be a little different as far as what's the best fit. So you have to really, truly get a good feel for where you're at. And then you can kind of shop and figure out, okay, where is it best to put my money? The rule of thumb, though, based on this conversation that I think Christian and I are 100% in agreement with, is you're almost always better off, especially if you have not hit that 7-figure mark yet, sinking that money back into your business. And it's just simple math, in my opinion. When you look at ROI, if you know you're netting 30, 40%, whatever your number is, 50%, and you're comparing it to something like a mutual fund or an annuity, that dollar going into your business is 3, 4, 5 times higher ROI. So why would you not invest in yourself and your business? You have more control, higher ROI, slam dunk, right? Slam dunk, in my opinion. So those are my final thoughts on today's episode. Again, before I ask Christian his final thoughts, I do want to recap Freebie Friday. If you comment on any of the live streams in the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Facebook group, one comment gets you one entry into the raffle, which we'll be doing tomorrow by end of day Friday. You have a maximum of one entry per live stream. So we did 4 of these: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you have up to 4 entries that you can do. And we are giving away tomorrow Turning 65 leads from Lead Heroes. So you definitely want to comment on these live streams if you're not already. Also, Christian and I try to get back to you guys if you ask us questions or you have comments that we want to respond to. So why wouldn't you just do it for that, right? Why would you not just want to interact with us, right? We're awesome. So that being said, Christian, final thoughts on today's episode on how an agent should invest their money.
Yeah. First off, I loved the topic. Great episode. I hope we provided a lot of value to you guys today. When I was younger, starting off in the business, that was always something I would wonder. I didn't get it. It took me a couple of years to really get it. I've talked about this on recent podcasts where, I didn't invest money into my business at the beginning, and I would spend it on just stupid, ridiculous things, like not even investing. I would spend it on, like, in 2015, I went to Malaysia. It cost me like $6,000, for everything. Dumb. Now, it was a great experience, everything like that. But like, man, I mean, at that point in time, how many leads could I have bought with $6,000?
Sure. Yeah.
A lot. 2017, I had this great idea to move to Florida. I'm like, you know what? We're going to do something different. We're going to move to Florida. We did. Cost, between moving there and moving back, it cost us $20,000.
Ooh.
These are in the early years of my career, right? Like, yeah. So I feel like more than anything else, not even necessarily just investing, understanding the value of your dollar.
Yeah.
I always think about another story that I was told, in the past by Dante Cantu, who I love, by the way. Shout out to him. He told me the story one time. I think it was on a podcast I did with him. I did one podcast with him. Go search the YouTube channel for it. I'm sure it's still up. He was driving somewhere, so it was all audio. But he told the story about in the early years of starting his first insurance agency call center that he ended up selling, did very well on. That he goes to this restaurant with his wife, and they're doing all right at this point. But he was so meticulous about the numbers, right? And like, if he invested this much into the business, it would be this much of return, that kind of thing. And he looks at the menu and the prices are a little higher than he wants to see. So he leans over to his wife. He's like, listen, I'm so sorry, but like, at this price, we're probably going to spend this much on dinner. If I put this money back into the business, it could bode this much of a return. And he's like, is it okay if we go somewhere less expensive? And she was like, yeah, of course. It's kind of the story. I'm not saying you have to be that meticulous about it, but if you want to be really successful, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad way to kind of look at things. So not necessarily all just about investing, but just how you spend your money, right? Like, spending money on your business is always going to be very, very valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. There's more, I guess there is more to it about, how you execute on spending that money, right?
Sure.
I guess there is the possibility, if you're really bad at your business, it might be better to put that money somewhere else. But the reality is you should have a system in place where you are netting a lot more than a lot of these traditional investments we talked about. But I love that story. I think there's a lot that the average agent could take away from that. I'm imagining how my wife would react if I sat down and said, "Hey, we gotta go.
we gotta go.
McDonald's is across the street. That's the price point I was really looking at tonight." 7-figure agent. I'm a baller on a budget, though. We're going to McDonald's.
Yeah. Yeah, guys, I think there's a lot to be said about just understanding the value of your money. A lot of us frivolously spend too. I know the last couple of years I've been guilty of that, and I've been trying to hone that in as well. And so, yeah. All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed the episode. We are over the hour, so we will wrap up. Again, as always, if you enjoyed the episode, whatever platform you're listening to us on, comment. If you have the ability to do so, leave us a 5-star review. If you have the ability to do so, like on Apple Podcasts, we'd appreciate that. Subscribe, like on various podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, any of those. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Later, everybody. Here's to your success and your abundance, and have a great rest of your week.